Snow Treasure, Chapter 14. Rain? But that couldn't be. Why, it would spoil everything. The children couldn't go down to the snake with their bricks of gold if the rain melted the snow and spoiled their sled track. And now Peter felt it was more important than anything else for him to go to the snake tomorrow. He had complained to himself of the long, tiring trip. He said he despised the same dull journey every second day. But he also knew that more than anything else in the world, he wanted the bullion delivered to the snake. Though the snow was 10 feet deep in drifts and hard packed on all the trails, a heavier rain would finish the sled rides. The mountain itself would be turned into a cataract. One could be swept along and even be drowned in the raging rush of water. It could be snow, Peter told Pregarson. No, rain, the servant said flatly. See for yourself. But Peter had no need to stretch out his hand for the raindrops. They were on his hair and in his face. The rain had begun to fall steadily and was making a pelting sound on the hard-crusted snow. He followed Pregarson back to the house, uncertain whether or not he should worry his mother with news of this new turn of events. Inside the kitchen, they could hear the steady downpour on the roof of the one-story lean-to. When Peter went back to the living room, the rain was pounding against the windows. It could be heard through the panes of the double-storm glass. No need to be afraid of telling his mother. Her look said that the rain could only be regarded as a calamity. It does seem a shame. Her head was bent over her knitting. We've had trouble enough, and now this? But what will we do, Mother? I don't know. We'll just have to wait and see. Perhaps Uncle Victor can help us out. He may be able to think of a way if the sleds can no longer be used. Uncle Victor? Why, his boat's not there. I've looked for it every time and I've not seen it once. Oh, I think it's there all right, Peter. I don't think we'll have any trouble finding it if we need to. Well, I hope you're right, Peter sighed. I looked for it and so did Helga. Helga has eyes that can see through a wall almost, but we've never once seen it. Mrs. Lundstrom's busy fingers flew in and out of the wool. The fire flickered and burned more brightly. Lovisa was putting Bunny to bed. She always told him a story before he went to sleep. Ordinarily, the sound of her voice, and sometimes his, would be heard in the living room. But tonight the storm shut out everything but itself. The rain kept drumming down. When Lovisa came in to say goodnight, it seemed less heavy. There was a new noise outside. The wind seemed to have caught up with its sleep and to have shaken off the stupor that had held it all day. Now it blew a loud roar. It tried to get into the house that had been well sealed against northern winter. The only entrance was by the chimney, and down that it came with a shower of sparks that blew out on the rug. Peter was kept busy stamping them out. Pregarson came in to bank the fire before he would go to bed. Instead of his slow shuffling gait, there was a new sprightliness to him. Use some of the liniment for your rheumatism, Mrs. Lundstrom said. I'll rub it in for you. Is no need, I think. Another great blow drove a gust of hot air out into the room. Pregarson's thick-soled shoes stomped up and down, beating out the big ember that had blown almost across to the blackout curtains. I fetch a screen for the hearth, he spoke gleefully. Perhaps it would be safer if you put the fire out, Mrs. Lundstrom suggested. Oh, but the cold. You'll die of the cold in the morning. But don't worry. I fixed it so neither the house burns down nor you freeze to death. Mrs. Lundstrom put down her knitting. Why, Pregarson, she looked up smiling, I believe you know something. Yeah, my bones. They tell me when there'll be a change in the weather. The rain turns to snow, my shoulder says. By midnight, all will be as if you've never seen it, something you've not seen in your lifetime. He spoke happily, but there was just a trace of scorn in his tone. It was scorn for all who had not lived as many years as he. Tomorrow you will see something you know nothing about. For this late in April, a blizzard. Pregarson was right. The next morning the world was a raging white fury. The Lundstrom house rocked through the night as the storm battered and pounded and pummeled. The wind seeped in through the tight-fitting double windows. It entered through cracks and crevices that no one knew existed. It seemed to force its way through openings that had been puttied and sealed with the greatest care. It tossed ancient ashes of the many fireplaces into little whirlpools of dust in all the rooms. By morning the kitchen had a spread of gritty black dirt over its usually spotless boards. But the Lundstroms slept soundly that night. Now they could hope for the gold safe transit again. There was no question of going to the Snake or anywhere else in the morning. Not even the weather-brave Norse children could venture out in such a storm. For 3 days the people of Ryswick kept to their homes. The postman seemed to be a person of the past. No one knew what had become of him. On the 3rd day of the blizzard, Dr. Aker started out to see one of his sick. But the way he walked backward in the wind and battled to keep his coat from being blown off, and dug his sealskin earmuffs into the collar of his coat, was enough to make people turn back to their own fires with a feeling of thankfulness that they didn't have to go out. There was food aplenty in all the houses. No one needed to worry about a neighbor going hungry. And though the kindling seemed to be eaten up by the hungry, fire-breathing dragons of the hearths, none in Ryswick would lack wood if the blizzard lasted a week. But what of the Germans? How were they standing the storm, the like of which only the very old could remember? Well, what of the Germans? Nothing could be done for them anyway, and since nobody had invited them to come up to the Arctic Circle to share a Norway blizzard, they would have to manage the best they could. Their buildings were erected hurriedly, and without the many inventive devices the Norwegians used to secure their own homes against the cold. If their barracks blow over, they'll be good and mad, Lovisa chuckled. She was enjoying being snowbound, as was every member of the Lundstrom household, including Bunny, who had missed his brother and sister on their trips away from home. Now he was overjoyed to be the center of attention again. He had been almost adored and was close to being spoiled before the Germans came to Norway. Since then, Peter and Lovisa played with him only when they had time and were not too tired. In some way that Bunny didn't quite understand, he knew it was the Germans who interfered with his fun. Now it was the same as before they came. So Bunny was happy, and so was the rest of the household, but the happiest of all was Per Garson. His bones, why, they must have felt like a kitten's. He went about his tasks with light, quick steps. His stooped shoulders straightened whenever he wasn't carrying heavy armloads of wood, or bringing in rugs or blankets to cover cracks where the snow came whirling in. Yes, Per Garson was in fine spirits. But you've seen nothing at all, he kept saying. If you don't remember the blizzard of '89, you don't know what cold weather is. Why, this is nothing but a cold snap. Mrs. Lundstrom had to laugh. This is bad enough for me, Per, and I guess for everyone else. Peter thought he would go out to the kitchen to read the barometer. They were all eager to know what to expect of the weather on the morrow. What's the use, Lovisa drawled. Just ask Per Garson. Per, what do your bones say? My bones say you stop mocking. He shook his fist at her.